There's a famous and ancient quote that says, "Those who do not study history are damned to repeat it." Nowhere is this more true than with our own lives. When we don't study our own history, we run the risk of getting stuck in the way we think, the way that we feel, the way that we act. We make the same mistakes over and over again, or we keep being stuck in places we don't want to be. But what if there was a simple way for us to study our life, to learn from our experience, to learn what worked as well as what didn't, so we can write a better life? And what if I told you that the solution is thousands of years old? Hi, I'm Ryder, founder of the Bullet Journal Method, and in this video, I want to show you one powerful way to break old patterns and write a better life. How? By creating what I call a life library. Let's dive in. It's easy to forget how magical of a technology books actually are. They allow us to transfer information from across space and time from one mind into another. To this day, they remain the closest technology we have to that thing in the Matrix for collapsing our timeline for learning about nearly any subject imaginable. Before the printing press, writing was largely a religious or a scholarly pursuit. Priests, monks, and scribes across cultures would spend their entire lives dedicated to preserving knowledge about their beliefs and their world by painstakingly copying and creating texts. Those who controlled access to this information held a power that shaped the course of many civilizations. This power was housed in libraries. Libraries, more than armies, more than riches, often revealed the true might of a civilization. One of the 7 wonders of the entire ancient world was a library. If you had access to a great library, you could study the rise and the fall of empires, the patterns that led to prosperity or ruin, the mistakes that a civilization made repeatedly across centuries. You could trace the threads of cause and effect through history and use those insights to build a brighter future. Libraries offered something invaluable: the ability to see patterns across time and space, to learn from experiences of those long lost, to find opportunities for a brighter future. There is, however, one subject that no book in any library will cover, and that is the subject of your life. That is, of course, unless you write it yourself. Imagine if you could create a library of your own life. This isn't just about cataloging what you had for lunch, but it's to create a resource that allows you to start tracking the patterns, cycles, and behaviors that shape the story of your life. To have a way of capturing and benefiting from all the countless hard-won lessons that are so easily forgotten hours, days, weeks, months, years after they happen. To have a place where you could trace the many threads of your own experience and weave them together into wisdom that you can use to make much more intentional choices about your future. Often we think of the story of our life in defining chapters. That job, that relationship, that summer. We may not even realize that we're living in a certain chapter until it's over. When we assume that's how life works, we have very little say in how our story unfolds. What if instead you had a way of defining a life chapter before you lived it? To me, every new notebook represents the next chapter of my life. And when I'm setting one up, it gives me an opportunity to slow down, to pause, to think about, what kind of life do I want? Who do I want to be in this next chapter of my life? And to do this, I set an intention. I literally write down, what do I want? Who do I want to be in this next chapter of my life? My intention creates a lens through which I can view my life during this chapter. It influences what I choose to work on, what I choose not to, what I choose to say yes to, and what I choose to say no to. In just a few sentences, I've now created a simple framework for better aligning my actions with my values. Of course, this is easier said than done, but it's much more likely that I will do things with intention when I have an intention than if I don't. Another famous quote says that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. When I reach the end of a chapter, I now have a rich record full of information about my thoughts and my feelings and my actions that I can reflect on. I can literally look at this and read it like a book. This helps me know what worked, what didn't, what I want more of and what I want less of in the next chapter of my life. Each year I go through about 3 to 4 notebooks. So I generate 3 to 4 new chapters worth of history that goes into my life library. So rather than starting from scratch, I can leverage this library to level up each new chapter. Now, to some, going through 4 notebooks a year seems like a lot. I get that. First of all, the number of notebooks you use really means nothing. Many people go through 1 notebook a year. I've met people who go through 1 notebook a month. Though how much you write is not important, that you keep writing is critical. And that is what rituals are for. A library is created 1 word at a time. The trick is to keep putting words together. The more regularly you write, the more useful your notebook becomes. The more useful your notebook becomes, the more useful your life library will become. To make writing sustainable, I've created daily, weekly, and monthly rituals. Now, to some, the word ritual may seem spooky, but all it really means is that you're doing things over and over again in service of a meaningful purpose. When it comes to BUJO, our rituals serve the purpose of writing a better life. Here's a quick look at our rituals. Our daily ritual serves the purpose of writing down what we're thinking, feeling, and experiencing and doing throughout the day. We do this using a technique called rapid logging, which allows us to quickly capture our life in single-sentence journal entries. This makes keeping a record much more sustainable than traditional journaling. To learn more about that, I'll drop a link below. Our weekly rituals help us take time to reflect on what we thought, felt, and experienced and did in the last 7 days. It's also an opportunity for us to clean up and update our records to make sure that they're accurate. We then take that insight and use it to create a simple action plan for the next 7 days. Our monthly ritual is very similar to the weekly ritual. There are a couple more things that we do to go even deeper, but generally speaking, what we're doing is taking a look at what we thought, felt, and experienced in the last 30 days. It also gives us an opportunity to update our timeline, which makes sure that we take a moment to think about whether our story is unfolding the way that we think it did, which we'll get into in a little bit. Again, we take any insight from that ritual and put it into action by creating a simple action plan for the next 30 days. Our chapter ritual follows this same idea but goes even deeper. It allows us to study the last chapter of our life before writing the next. Though each ritual is slightly different from each other, by and large, they're structurally pretty similar, and that's on purpose. I want to keep things as simple as possible. And when life laughs at my plans, as it usually does, this redundancy helps me maintain an accurate record even when I miss a ritual or 4. Over time, these rituals yield both a very detailed and high-level view of my life. I can zoom in and out of any period of time to see what was going on in the world around me, as well as the one going on within me over days, months, even decades at this point. This gives me a tremendous overview of my life. I've often used this record to find old ideas that apply to new projects or to revisit tools and strategies that I successfully used in the past to address my needs in the present. Sometimes we just have ideas that are great, we just have them at the wrong time. Now I have a way to store them. Often what's even more important than having a record of what worked is having a record of what didn't. Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again, but expect different results. When we're not documenting our lives, we can easily fall into this trap without even realizing it, and that can be really maddening. When you start keeping a life library, one thing that becomes shockingly clear is how unreliable our memory is. It's unreliable in 2 ways. 1, we easily forget things even when they're really important. And 2, we misremember things all the time. Over time, strong feelings and thoughts can slowly rewrite history. A great dinner with a lousy waiter becomes a terrible meal a few months later. Or you can begin to second guess our choice to end a relationship when the memory of all the constant fighting begins to fade. Our memory often does not reflect our reality. Yet we rely on our memory to make choices that create our future. It's no surprise then that we keep finding ourselves in the same unhappy places over and over again. With a life library, you no longer have to depend on your memory alone. You can time travel back to exactly what happened and when. You can clearly see what you were thinking, feeling, and doing and experiencing at any given point. You can see what choices you made and the impact they had over time. You can see whether those choices helped you create the kind of life you wanted or not. Then you can use that information to take some of the guesswork out of creating your future. You can see from your old patterns that this kind of work reliably makes you feel unsatisfied, or this kind of relationship really lights you up. These are the things you like to do, these are the things you don't. You begin to see things with clarity that otherwise would remain hidden in the rush of our busy life. That's what our rituals are for, to stop, to pause and reflect on what we have, to create the possibility for what we want. Now, you don't need to fill out 4 notebooks a year to create your life library. All you need to do is get started with these 3 things: a notebook, a notation, and a ritual. Use a notebook to capture your story. Any notebook will do. Yes, there is the official bullet journal notebook that I will link below, but the best time to start is always now. So start with whatever you have laying around. Ideally, it's something that you're not all that precious about. Life is really messy, so your notebook should be too. Don't let perfectionism get in the way of practice. This happens all the time. We just want to have some kind of medium that allows us to take our thoughts and put them on paper. Speaking of which, use a notation. So rather than just writing stuff down, find a system that allows you to quickly capture your life in a sustainable way. I found that traditional journaling can be an exceptionally powerful tool for documenting your life. I just found it's not really sustainable, especially if you're doing it on a daily basis. That's why I invented rapid logging. It'll help you quickly capture your life 1 sentence at a time. Again, more details on rapid logging in the video linked below. Last but not least, find a ritual. Create one. A library is created 1 book, 1 sentence, 1 word at a time. There is no rush. The trick is to have a regular writing practice, be it daily, weekly, or even monthly. Block out a regular time where you can sit down and write about your life. All you're really doing is taking notes on your life. And consistency here is key. It is also what most people struggle with when it comes to productivity in general. That's why we created the bullet journal plans, a way to consistently practice those rituals that I mentioned earlier. And if you're interested in those, you can join me and my team and bullet journalists from around the world every week and month in writing a better life. You can learn more about those here or by visiting bulletjournal.com. Having a life library can be an invaluable resource, both personally and professionally. It's a wealth of data that you can use in countless ways, but I would argue that the most valuable feature of a life library is in its creation. When you write with a life library in mind, when you have that context, you think about your life quite differently. It helps you keep the bigger picture in mind, which is especially useful when you get tripped up in the daily details. It's also a profound act of self-care and personal responsibility. When you start seeing every notebook as the next chapter of your life, you have to acknowledge that it's up to you how that story unfolds. As author Seth Godin once said, "There is no lifeboat coming." The hard truth is that life owes you nothing. If there is something that you care about, it's up to you to make it happen. The question is how. That answer is part of a journey that unfolds 1 word at a time. It is a journey that transforms you from being a character in the story of your life to its author. That journey is a story worthy of study, reverence, and of a home.